Welcome to another episode of Diary of a Not So Mad Black Woman. And I use that term black woman loosely because I did say I was going to not say black woman because this is black, but I already got the name. So we'll see. But anyway, I'm excited about my guest today. We are going to talk about racism in corporate America. Racism in corporate America. We've all have our perspectives and we all have our experiences. But I have with me today, joining me, my three daughters. I have Sierra Sanders, who is a law student at Southern University. And she was on our last segment, which was phenomenal. All three of my girls. Hey, if you didn't watch it, go back and listen to it and watch it. I guarantee you, you're going to be blessed. We have also with us my daughter, Kiera Baker. She got to remind me every now and then because I still want to say Sanders. You've been Sanders all my life. I mean, your life. And she's recently married. Oh, look at God. And she is uh, uh, gosh, how did I forget your title again? At a financial institution. She is a representative at a financial institution, and she is here to share her perspective as well as Mariana Sanders. She works at the same financial institution as Kiera, and they have been, and see, that's where you tripping me up. I'm not going to call you Kiera. I'm going to call you Brianna, but I will call you Baker. Okay, that's kind of slowing me down with my intro. And Mariana, she works at the same financial institution as a representative there, and they have done great works. But before we jump into our questions, I just want to explain a little bit about what is racism. What is racism in corporate America? Racism in corporate America refers to the ways in which racism and discrimination manifest in the policies, the practices, and the culture of businesses and organizations in our United States, right? This can include discriminatory hiring and promotion practices, pay disparities, and unequal treatment of employees based on their race. Racism in corporate America can also involve the way in which businesses interact with and affect the wider community. For example, companies may engage in discriminatory business practices that harm people of color or contribute to systemic inequalities. It is important for businesses and organizations to actively work to combat racism and discrimination in all forms. This can include implementing policies and practices that promote diversity and inclusion and belonging. That's very important, as well as equality and equity. Providing training on unconscious biases and diversity, and taking steps to address and rectify any discriminatory practices or policies. It is also important for businesses to consider the ways in which their actions and decisions may contribute to systemic racism and work to mitigate the negative impacts on marginalized communities. So, with that said, I want to open up to my panel to just give a brief introduction of yourself, and then we'll jump right into our questions. And you can go in any order.
Hello, everyone. My name is Sierra Sanders, and I am a third year law student at Southern University Law Center down in Baton Rouge, Louisiana. Interested in entertainment law, and I have a lot to say about racism in corporate America.
Okay. Who
I
wants to
am
go next?
Kiera Baker. Like my mom said before, I am newly married. I am a mother to a 3-year-old daughter, and I am excited to be here. Thanks for having me.
Awesome.
Hi, I'm Mariana. I am currently working as a just a tech associate at a financial institution, helping troubleshoot and things like that. attend Northern Kentucky University, have left. And yeah, I got a lot to say about racism. Thank you for having me. This is exciting.
Yep. All right, so let's kick it right off. So my first question to our panel is, can you share some examples of how racism manifests in the workplace? Whether they're personal experiences or examples that you have heard of, and feel free to elaborate.
Do you mind
I
repeating
think
that? I'm sorry, this was
Yes,
blurred.
the question is, can you share some examples of how racism manifests in the workplace?
Did you hear the question, Mary? Okay. Um, so I think that speaking as a Black woman who has worked in corporate America, um, racism to me manifests in how my white counterparts talk to me. Um, it and then my response, if I have a response that is the same of a older white man, it's seen as being aggressive. People don't receive it as well as they would. Um, I'm not gonna say any names because as well as they would an older white man or somebody who is more senior. And I've seen that happen not only to me, but to other Black people who I've worked with, or I'm sorry, African Americans who I've worked with as well. And I've interviewed a lot of entertainment attorneys, and that's the same way that a lot of the women feel. Also, they also feel um, less than their Black male counterparts as well. So I think that that's an issue.
And that's a great point that you bring up. There are many biases that accompany that ideal, that when you assert yourself or you use your boldness to articulate your wants and your needs, that you are being in some way aggressive, or I've heard the term bullying and things like that, those negative connotations that are not associated with a different gendered person, such as a white male, right, can say and do the same thing and is perceived as empowering. So yes, that is absolutely, and yeah, I know some of the experiences that you've had, and yeah, it's hard as you try to navigate through those contrasts, right, and double standards. Yeah. Who else wants to speak on that? What are some examples of how racism manifests in the workplace?
I would say, by the way that we're treated versus maybe someone of a different race is treated. I feel like definitely when you have the wrong people in positions of power, I've even experienced racism from a Black man, which is pretty disturbing. But when you have the wrong people in power, a lot of times workers follow after what management is doing. So I just feel like just the mistreatment, the little side comments, or even like expecting us to do certain jobs they wouldn't have other people doing.
Yep.
Yes, or doing themselves. They're not going to do it and they expect us to do it. And treat us poorly. While we're doing it, just so we're doing it so that, we can keep our job and, not get in trouble or put our family in a position to where now we're lacking. But I agree with Sierra when she spoke about how, maybe the things that we say is perceived differently than someone else in authority, and now we're angry, or we're being a bully, or just things of that sort. We're really misunderstood.
Yeah, I think we touched on it in our last segment where we talked about the difference between the generation now, right? The millennials and the younger generation, and how uh, the authority, right? The structure or the hierarchy of authority is viewed. And I think that some of the mentality that has been brought into that entitlement of we are superior, you are inferior, and it causes people to believe that we don't have equal rights to have, intellect, perspective, and even just the right to have ownership of our own actions, right? So you see that. But I love how you mentioned, Mary, that there were there were times that you experienced racism from a Black man. Can you expound on that a little bit?
Yeah, so I feel like at the job that I was working at the time, it was giving very much slave culture. Just by the way that they operated, even down to the uniforms, you looking like, okay. So the manager, of course, he's just doing what he feels is appropriate, but the way that he treated his employees was just not good. And then the way that I seen his boss treat him, I was able to understand it more. But when I say I experienced racism from him, what I mean by that is I experienced racism directly from a manager under him. And me being a Black woman or African American woman, him being an African American man, we expect for them to protect us. So when I go to him for that protection, he defends the white woman who is clearly wrong. So to me, you're just as bad as the racist. You start treating me different. And this is another thing that I know y'all can relate to. When you're not the issue and you raise the issue and they try to make you the issue. So that's what I mean by I started experiencing racism from him, because the issue was rooted in racism. So now you're treating me as if I'm the issue because I'm the one being attacked from a racist.
Yeah, and I think it's interesting going back to the comment that Bree made when she said, "You want me to do things that you're not willing to do." Right. And so I recently was in a conversation with someone, and we were talking about some of the biases that I experienced, and I classified them or categorized those biases as having racist undertones. And the person that I was talking to was trying to convince me that that was not my experience. And so, as I was explaining to this individual, I've had many encounters with racism, and I pretty much know how to quickly identify what I'm dealing with versus maybe a personality conflict or issue that I may have. So she used as an example, going back to the point that Bree was making, she used as an example that she's an African American woman, and she was once in a meeting, and in that meeting, in front of everyone, one of her superiors turned to her out of everyone in the room and said, "Go get me some coffee." And to her, it was very offensive because she knew what that comment was rooted in, and she understood that in that very moment he was demeaning her, and he felt that she was inferior or she was to serve him. And so she shared that to me as in contrast to some of the challenges that I brought to her attention. And so what I share with her is, well, while no one's going to ask me to get their coffee for very obvious reasons, but it will come in the form of when I'm in meetings, relegating my role or my responsibility to note taking, or assuming that I'm the assistant or I'm there to assist. So while the nature of my function as I manage, I'm a project, a program manager. And so what I do, I'm a servant leader in what I do, but I am not by any means your note taker. So I've had to, and this is how I've built my brand over the years. I'm almost like that housekeeper who comes in and says, "I don't do windows. I don't do windows." And one of the things that I establish up front is if it's my meetings, I'll take notes. If it's your meeting, you take the notes. And if you need me to take notes for you because you are incapable of taking the notes, I love taking notes and I do very copious notes. So I'm very good at it. But if you want me to take the notes because it's a way for you to weaponize that task into making or putting me in my place, it ain't gonna happen, you know. So you talked about that. And so I just wanted to touch on that and going back to what Sierra was saying about how you can say the same thing that someone else said and it will be perceived. I've been accused of being aggressive in my tone because I deal with people very directly. And oftentimes, even if I have to elevate my voice, I am still professional in the way that I do it. I may elevate the volume of my voice in order to get a point across because the volume of the other's voice may be raised, but I will not engage in an unprofessional back and forth, if that makes sense. But yeah, you guys, I can absolutely relate to that. So here's a question that I have. How can companies address and combat racism within their organization? What are some of the things that you think would be beneficial, some tangible things? Because, and I'll say this and let you answer, a lot of times companies like to tick off the box and say, well, we've got our diversity and inclusion, and we've got our belonging and equity and all of these things. We're ticking off the box of 100 Black people or minorities that we brought into the company, but we have not built an infrastructure around these minority groups, these marginalized groups, so that they can successfully thrive in these environments. We just want to be able to say, hey, we reflect what our customers look like, and we have enough of y'all in here, but we're not doing anything about it. What are some tangible ways that organizations can make an effective change?
I personally think that or organizations need to be intentional about hiring people of color in these executive positions. There are a lot of quotas that they have to meet for the company, and honestly, people of color rarely reach it to that level. They've met that quota and they're like, okay, we're good. We have enough Black people. And then another thing that companies have been doing after the murder of George Floyd was implementing these new diversity programs, DE&I initiatives that they do at their companies, and they offer training to their employees. But I personally do not believe that that's enough. Because there's still issues. Like, yes, it might get the people to thinking, maybe this behavior is not acceptable. But 9 times out of 10, if there are executives who are white and they're not, acting on these complaints that their Black employees have, then this training that they're providing is not really doing anything. So yeah, I just think that more people of color should be in these higher up positions. They should intentionally seek out, and it's so many people who are qualified, so many African American people who are qualified to be in these roles. They just don't seek out them. There are so many times where I research a company that I have an interview with, and I go to their employee page and I rarely see any Black people at these companies. So I definitely think that.
I think that's a great, sorry.
I'm done.
I think that's actually a great point, right? And I think that a lot of companies will target those lower level positions, right? Because they have accepted that certain minority groups are phenomenal workers, but they won't put minorities in those leadership roles that can actually affect change. One of the things that I like to say, if he on the camera, he got to speak. Tell him to say hello. That's my son in love. All right, so oh, that's so sweet. But one of the things that that companies will do is they will not hire representation in a position of leadership that can actually affect change, because we understand our culture just like they understand theirs. As a matter of fact, we are bicultural just as someone is bilingual, right? We understand both worlds and we know how to navigate through. But sometimes it's harder to gain a voice if you don't have someone looking like you representing you. And what has been the excuse for many companies is, as you alluded to, we can't find qualified candidates to take on these roles. I recently asked one of the VPs in our organization, when she and I had a conversation about targeting and being very deliberate and intentional about bringing minority resources into the organization through IT. When the comment was made, we've tried to, but we can't find qualified resources. I said, where are you looking? Who have you asked where to look? Because you have to change your strategy. And as a matter of fact, nobody asked me, because my first answer would have been, let's go to where people are. People are very much willing. And if you lean in and pull people forward, you'll have a workforce that you never thought existed, right? So we are here, we are ready, and we are more than equipped to do the job. You just got to present a place that is safe. And the other part of that is, not once you've recruited people in, how do you retain them? What is the structure around ensuring that the workplace is something that is comfortable and safe for minorities that you're trying to attract and draw in? We're talking about some shattering and changing of the dynamics of corporate America. And so you got to do some changes. So anybody else have anything to say on that topic?
I agree with C. Huh?
Mhm.
And I agree with you. Representation is very important. And as far as like the trainings that these companies are trying to implement and stuff like that, I feel like representation is important as well with the trainers training the trainees, because it's like, how y'all got all these white people in these can I say that?
Uh,
Sorry.
yeah,
How do
go ahead.
y'all have people who are not us, trying to tell a story, trying to tell our stories? You know what I'm saying? So it's kind of misleading when we have these trainings about diversity and stuff like that, and there's or racism, and there's nobody who actually experienced that. We're never in the videos. We're never, the ones that's training. We're always to talk about, but we're never the ones that get to talk about what we go through.
That is
How
a
you know
great,
what we going through?
right. That's a great point. And not only that, how committed are you to our plight and our experience if, number one, you're not even giving us representation, and what you are saying you're representing? And then the first thing out when they start doing those budget cuts are what? The diversity, the inclusion, and things like that. There is a whole community of African Americans, and I'm talking that specifically because our focus is on our community, right? And there is a whole group of people who specialize in diversity, teaching and training in a tangible way how to eradicate racism in the workplace. And I heard somebody say this before, and I used this quote, but I forgot her name. She was in one of the seminars I was in. And she said, in order for you to have groundbreaking change, you got to break up the ground. Nobody's willing to break up the ground. And that's the challenge. How about you, Mary?
So yes, exactly what you just said. That is perfect leading into what I want to say. So you got to break up the ground. So I feel like my suggestion it's like far-fetched in the world that we live in, but it shouldn't be that far-fetched. So I feel like we're in a place that is built off systemic racism. So to me, what you have to do is you have to tear down HR, because honestly, any corporate HR is not there to help the person, is there to help the company. So you need to tear down that HR and really build up human resources that has different representation of every group. But when I say that, I think that they need to have people who have real life situations, who really dealt with racism in that room when you're interviewing people, so we can smoke out the fakes and get the real people in. Because somebody who has experienced that, they don't want to go to somebody in HR who's going to tell them, are you sure it's racism? What do you mean, am I sure it's racism? As sure as I am that I'm an African American woman, I'm sure. So I feel like you need people, not, don't just hire just by the higher ups. Put some people in that room who done been through this, so they can let you know, she ain't gonna know. She ain't gonna know what that person going through.
Yes, yes, that is a great point. A great point. Uh, here's another good question I think that you guys can speak on. How do intersecting forms of discrimination, such as racism and sexism, impact marginalized employees in corporate America? So, how do intersecting forms of discrimination? So, it's almost like sometimes as a minority, you may be doubly impacted by certain sets or isms. I call them isms, right, in corporate America. For instance, you may be a woman and you may be an African American. And in that sense, that the type of racism that you deal with, including sexism, I may not be respected in my leadership role because I am a woman, but even more so, I'm less respected because I'm an African American woman, because we are a marginalized race that people don't think that we have the same intellect that they have, capabilities, or ability to lead. So, can anyone speak on that? And it could be any form or fashion. Um, you know, what do you call it? The gay rights movement, the uh, female, different races. How do you think that those things are impacting individuals? Being a double whammy, I guess.
I feel like just like having double isms against you, it can take a toll, as we were talking about in the previous podcast, on your mental health, because it's like you're getting it twice as much as you should, and you shouldn't be getting it at all. So it could just be overwhelming. And also too, companies miss out on great talent, or they just steal the ideas of the person and act like it was the person who they don't want to have them isms against. So that'll take a toll on the person as well. Like, yo, you really just gonna steal what I said and act like you came up with it? I feel like it can be traumatizing. And I just think people deserve better in the workplace.
Next show, I'm gonna have to get me some tissues. Okay, great point, Mary. Anybody else?
I personally feel like being a Black woman is probably the lowest on the totem pole. Just from experience and hearing other Black women experiences, I haven't heard similar experiences from other people in different isms, like get the LGBTQ. I'm sorry, what is it?
Yeah. LBGTQ, I think.
GTQ. Okay, I don't want to mess it up. But I feel like they have garnered so much more support in the workforce than Black people. And I don't understand how, that. I mean, I have nothing against them, but I just feel like, they're more sensitive to you if you're gay. Um, they are, they rally behind that. But if a Black person says something and a gay person says something, then 9 times out of 10 the gay person will be respected. And then, like Mary said, they'll ask you, are you sure it's racism? They say we throw that card around too long, like we're just not being discriminated against, and it's all in our heads and we're told to forget about it, but I don't know, other people get their issues resolved a lot quicker. So Black women, I feel like that is I wouldn't say the worst because I love being a Black woman, but that's the most disrespected group, in my opinion, in the workforce.
Yeah. No, I agree with that. I believe that we constantly get nudged to the back, right? We get nudged to the back of the group. And the unfortunate thing, I heard something said the other day. There was someone who was talking about her experience. She was a minority, and I want to say that she was of the Latino race, but I cannot coin exactly what her group was. But it was a conversation, and it was with a Caucasian woman or a white woman, a Latino or a brown woman, and an African American woman or a Black woman, and they were trying to help the uh, Caucasian lady to understand the plight of the Black woman as it relates to a lot of the racism and challenges that she experiences as being not entitled. And so the lady's argument was, I'm not entitled. How could I possibly be entitled when my husband left me? I have to raise my children on my own. There's nothing entitled about my life. As a matter of fact, last week I had to decide between whether or not I would get my nails done or my hair done. I promise you. And so that statement in and of itself would have prompted me to end the conversation, because in my experience, you have to have some type of foundational understanding, right? In order to have an intelligent dialogue back and forth. And at that point, I realized that they could not bring her up to a level of understanding. But the Latino lady, she said, I don't benefit from being anti white. She said, I don't benefit from being anti brown, but I do benefit from being, I mean, no, I'm sorry, not anti. I'm so sorry. She said non white, non brown, but I benefit from being non Black. And she said what that meant to her was, and this is just me paraphrasing and articulating it the way I heard it. She said what that meant to her is that there are layers to this in this United States that we live in. And the racism that we experience, as you alluded to, Sierra, it has a lowest part of the totem pole. And that is where Black people reside. And this is throughout the world. We are viewed and revered in a negative connotation. And she was saying, as a brown woman, I still get some benefits that a Black woman will never be able to realize. And still, towards the end of the conversation, I don't think that they were able to pull the woman into a better understanding. But again, that just kind of stuck with me, that the challenge for us as minorities is that we're all fighting an uphill battle with a supremacist philosophy. We're all battling this philosophy, and then we begin to fight with each other, because it's like, well, wait a minute. I can't let your issues be resolved before mine, because my issues are more detrimental than yours. And then we begin to start trying to get ourselves in the front of the line versus continuously being pushed back and pushed back and pushed back. And that's why I dedicate a lot of our conversations to specifically to our community. And I would expect that my brothers and sisters of minority descent will understand why we need to take our focus and focus on our house first. And we'll come over and help them at their house, but we got to focus on our house first. And if you're really my brother and sister, you will understand that. I think Malcolm X did a speech on it one time before, but we got to take care of this over here first. And because we always get pushed to the back, our needs. And look at what happened with you talked about in the last segment, you talked about George Floyd and some of the uproar that happened. We had a lot of riots, we had a lot of things, but there was no legislation that was passed. Then something happened in the Asian community, and what happened? They changed the laws to accommodate protecting that one set group, and also in the Latino community. It is a difference, and we keep trying to act like there's not. But I will continue to, say loud and proud and clear until they change those dynamics. There is a difference. Bree, did you have anything on the topic? I want to give you an opportunity. Okay. All right. So now we'll go to, this will be my last question. We talked about what companies can do to prevent some of the racial disparities that we see. And maybe this is a little bit along the same lines of the discussion. But what steps do you think, maybe I won't ask that one. All right, I'll ask this one instead. How can corporate America work to address and dismantle systemic racism within industries and supply chains?
The first step is admitting with their problem. You need to admit that there is racism going on. And after that, you need to break the system down and rebuild it up, because honestly, it's time. It's time. It's been way too long that our people have had to suffer in a place that we literally built. So I just feel like it's time. And I feel like people are scared to break the system down and rebuild it because that's all they know. But it's time to learn something new.
I would say, you said how can companies or how can it be changed?
Either one. I said companies, but if you have a perspective on how it can be changed, that would be good.
I think that it can be changed if African American people or people of color speak up and continue to fight back, because a lot of times they feel like they can't say anything for fear of losing their jobs when their white counterpart is just saying whatever comes to their mind. And I think that, when they all, if they all feel a certain type of way, they shouldn't be ashamed to speak up on it, to make a complaint against their superior if that's what needs to happen. But I think that a lot of them are scared. We shouldn't have fear of, being treated equally. We're not even asking to be treated superior. We're asking to be treated the same as the person sitting right next to us in meetings and in any other work related activity. So yeah, that's my 2 cents.
I think that we have to continue to hold these people accountable for their actions and how they treat us. And, don't stop until you get the outcome that you deserve, which is equality. Some
All
type of
right.
respect.
I'm telling you, you know what? Hey, I'm with that. I'm with it all.
Mhm.
All right. Well, again, thank you so much for a great show. Again, I invite you once a month. Y'all get mommy once a month. And I'm so glad that you all helped me to kick this off. I'm so proud. I just cannot say enough how proud I am of the women that God is creating you to be. So thank you so much for joining. And I'm going to post this real soon so everybody can enjoy this wisdom that God has prepared for us. So, all right. I love you all.
Thank you. Love
All
y'all.
right.
Love
Love
y'all.
you too.
Bye-bye.
Love y'all too. Bye.